Team Fortress 2's class selection screen has been a topic that's been done to death. I mean, seriously, everyone knows how the classes don't fit perfectly into their own class role. But what if they actually did? Sorry, I got a bird stuck in my throat. Yeah, I'm doing a video on how to make every class fit into the roles of offense, defense, and support, because nobody is going to stop me and I have nothing better to do. How I'm going to do this is to start by defining what each one means. You'd think it'd be simple, but when 9 classes exist, there's bound to be ways that they each can blend into each different role, so I'm going to try to make it so they're as accurate as possible to how the game works. Offense to me mainly refers to classes that would be good at attacking, but maybe not the greatest in defensive scenarios. Simple enough, but we'll need to be more specific, because take a class like Soldier. In the game he's listed as an offensive class, but he's still very good on defense or even supportive roles. For example, he has weapons and tools such as the Battalion's Backup, which are tailor-made to make him better at defense and support while taking away his offensive capabilities. So to fix this, we'll go over what stops a class from being each one, and we'll look at instead of what they could do, and instead look at what they generally do in the form of the player base. Example again is Soldier. Generally, Soldier players are always on the front lines, offensively or defensively, and are among the first ones to attack, making them a clear choice for the offensive role. Defense, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. Great at defensive roles, but offensively not very good, or at least not as good as other classes. And then lastly, support, which is more so a blend of support classes that are best at healing or help with the backlines, and classes that are a jack of all trades, which I'll show later on. I'm going to start with everyone as they're listed on the class selection screen and go from there. First is the Scout. Scout is clearly an offensive powerhouse, and there's really nowhere else he could go. Yes, he has supportive tools like the Mad Milk, but if you're playing purely as a supportive role, you're just forcing yourself in a role that is really best suited for other classes. Next is Soldier, and yes, he stays as an offensive class. Honestly, it's just because if we're trying to stick everyone into the 3 per role kind of thing, then there's really not much that I can possibly do to make this make some sense without putting another class in a role that really does not fit them. Moving on, third is Pyro, who I made into a support class, which I don't think many people would have an issue with. He's decent offensively and defensively when in only those roles, but really becomes a great class when you as the player are able to go from one to the other and into supportive roles such as using Air Blast to save fellow players, and helping the team when a random spy happens to come by. Now on to the first controversial change of the list, or at least potentially controversial. I made Demo Man into an offensive class. The reasoning for this is because I feel his offensive capabilities are generally just better than his defensive capabilities. I know this sounds stupid, especially when sticky traps exist, but generally I think I see Demo Man used offensively more effectively than defensively. From sticky spam to Demo Knight to just good old pipes, Demo is an absolute offensive powerhouse, with the only issue being the need to reload so often and everything being projectiles, which is more manageable when on defense, but I don't think it's that much better to keep him as a defensive class. Now on to someone who keeps their defensive class slot. It's Heavy. Yes, he's good offensively, but overall he's just at his best in defensive or supportive roles, and he's generally better in the defensive role. He's too slow to keep up with every other offensive class unless he's already set up, so he struggles when the front lines are constantly moving up unless he is the one making the move, which is generally only possible when he has his team or of course a medic helping them. Unless of course if said Heavy is just the greatest player of all time, but at that point he could literally be using any other class. Engineer is a class I'm very happy with slotting into the support role, and I don't think anyone has an issue with it. While his defensive capabilities are amazing and among the best in the game, especially when people stack as him, but he's obviously best as a support class due to his dispenser and teleporter, plus just how good he can be offensively. There's Gunslinger NG of course, but even with the Jagger, the Eureka effect, he can be very powerful offensively, which makes keeping him as a defensive class make less sense. Now there's Medic, who is the easiest one to keep in his role as support. He heals. Obviously he's a support class. He's not very good at his combat abilities, unless if you're the rare player that is a god amongst men with the Blutsauger, but I mean, why would you bother to get that good with the Blutsauger? Let's be real here. Moving on, Sniper I made into a defensive class, which I think makes sense. Sniper is one of the harder classes to choose for a role, as he honestly could fit into each one to some extent. I chose to put him as a defense class though, because I feel with how he's played in a casual setting in modern TF2, snipers are usually lone wolves, not caring for whatever the rest of the team is doing, for better or for worse. And generally, snipers do their best when the lines aren't moving, making a defensive role much easier to handle for the class. He can work offensively, but depending on map, he literally needs to be on the front lines or at least close to them to function. While on defensive roles and maps, he tends to do far better because the lines are moving less often for the defensive team than the offensive one, as long as your team is half decent, of course. Now for the final class, I put Spy as a defensive class. This choice is the one that I feel fits the least for his role in the game. Heck, I even left him as an offensive class when first writing the script. But overall, if he can't be the support class because of everyone else that's in there, he fits a defensive setting better in my eyes. Generally, Spy does his best when people are on the move and pushing forward or getting pushed back, and the deciding factor between offense and defense for me is how engineers work. Engineer in a defensive setting is much different than offensively, as on offense teleporters are a far bigger factor, so I think Spy can do a much better impact on defense. While a Spy can sap a sentry, literally any other power class could take down one as well, while teleporters are a much bigger threat that other classes have a hard time getting to due to them being on the back lines generally, at least if the engineer is doing his job, which Spy excels at taking down. So this is the order that they're in with the current class roles, which, as you can tell, don't fit perfectly. I mean, Spy being a defensive class is a bit of a stretch. I mean, he's more of a support class, if anything, but if we're keeping to the 3 classes per role thing, then that's just how it's gotta be. But what if they were different? Sorry, got another bird in my throat, that was weird. In my eyes, for modern TF2, these roles fit much better. Generalist classes, specialist classes, and support classes. I think with this small change I can make classes that fit a bit better for their roles. Now what do these mean? Now as you can imagine, generalists are just classes that can do essentially anything, nothing complicated there. Specialists on the other hand are the opposite, classes that play basically the same no matter what and are there for their specific use cases. As for the support classes, they're essentially just the same as usual. Now, what changes here? Let's start with generalists, which are Soldier, Pyro, and Demo Man. Soldier in the community is well known to be the most generalist class to exist, so that's no surprise. Okay. Pyro was swapped into the generalist role instead of support role because instead of being forced into either being support or full-on offensive or defensive, he's able to be properly defined as he is, a class that can do pretty much anything. Finally, Demo Man is my final choice as a generalist, due to him easily slotting into an offensive and defensive role, while also having a decent variety in gameplay with Demo Knight existing. As for specialists, I chose Scout, Sniper, and Spy. Scout fits in this role as he's mainly in a hit and run sort of playstyle, and without that he really struggles at times to make a difference, especially in stalemates. Sniper and Spy, on the other hand, both have an issue of being pick classes that require a very specific game state, and without those game states, they really struggle. And even outside of that, they really only have one sort of gameplay style, with the exception being the Huntsman on Sniper, but let's be real here, that's still pretty similar to typical Sniper. Finally, we've got the support classes, which are Engineer, Heavy, and Medic. Engie and Medic are completely unchanged, but why did I pick Heavy for support? Well, to me, Heavy is a class that is best in that kind of role. You don't expect him to single-handedly push against the entire enemy offense or defense, and instead is amazing in a role where he's alongside everyone else and supporting them, instead of being the focal point of an attack. How many times have you seen a Medic player uber a Heavy and try pushing into a sentry nest to no avail, while the next time the local Demo Man is able to do so without much help even from the Medic? I'm not saying Heavy can't do this, but he has a harder time doing it alone rather than others. Now here's the final tier list on both of the suggestions I've made. If you have any suggestions on how you'd change things or just the video in general, leave it in the comments, and leave a like if you enjoyed this. It was fun trying to think up how to fix this honestly small issue in the game, and I hope you enjoyed watching this as I had fun making it. Also, thank you to YouTubers like Great Blue and Fish Stick on a Stick for inspiring me to make this video. Bye bye!